Good morning, Michael. Good afternoon.
Hi, Kadira.
Welcome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
my name's Kadira Jennings, and I'm excited to interview Michael today. I'm a New Zealand-born artist currently living in Australia. It's fascinating to me that as artists, we both have an interest actually in quantum physics and shamanism. Not that I have a physics background, but Michael certainly does. While my art practice addresses capturing the beauty and spiritual nature of landscape and flowerscapes, I believe that Michael is at the cutting edge of contemporary art with the digital and photographic blend of work that he does. I'd like to share a little of his fascinating background with you before we hear from Michael himself. After starting to earn a PhD in theoretical astrophysics, I have a hard time even saying that, never mind doing it, from the University of Toledo, Michael decided not to pursue academia and went into tabletop game design in early 1980s for a company that made the hugely successful game Dungeons and Dragons. He spent 30 years developing toys and games before embarking on his artistic path. Michael tells us that science is a very powerful way to touch the inner dreamer. I find that interesting, so we might hear a bit more about that in a minute.
Yes.
I find this to be an intriguing synergy of his shamanic and scientific backgrounds. It is not a connection that I would normally have made between the two disciplines. He also says, to truly understand our world, we need a profound shift away from the perspective of old notions. My artwork presents just such a shift, weaving elements of chaos theory, quantum mechanics, cosmology, neuroscience, dreams, and technology into a cohesive artistic and spiritual framework. Wow. His highly conceptual work is a blend of digital art and photography, reflecting what he calls his spiritual math physics nexus. Digital manipulations of nature scenes with shadowy beasts, blurry birds, and sun-baked deserts speak to his attraction to Native American spirituality, while fractals burst into colourful patterns, and these are influenced by his love of math and science. Of his art, Michael says, it is often an expression of my formal education in physics and mathematics, my personal experiences with Native American spirituality, curiosity with psychology and neuroscience, and my interest in the origin stories of world cultures. I've been published in scientific journals, and I am a sacred pipe carrier. Wow, that is an amazing background. What a fascinating person you are, Michael. I can't believe all the things that you've studied and that you put together. You want to tell me a little bit about what prompted you to diverge from your career in physics and theoretical astrophysics to becoming a writer and artist?
Oh, I wish there was something like really profound, but it's funny. I guess sometimes those things in life, the um, the academic advisor that I had at Toledo that I was working with that I actually did my published paper with um, actually left midway while I was there pursuing my degree. And the following advisor that I got was somebody that I just didn't really connect with. He was the chairman of the astronomy department, a
Right.
really brilliant individual that I highly respected. But for me, there was just this personality mismatch,
Uh-oh.
uh, and it really threw me for a loop. And I realized at that point that so much of what I was studying was for me very personal. And it's been in the intervening years that I've really come to realize that so much of the physics, astronomy, and hard science and mathematics background that I was really delving deeply into was very personal and something that really was spiritual for me.
Right.
And so that profound change that seemed kind of whimsical in some degree really changed the direction of my life almost on a dime. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing how I think the universe does that to us sometimes, like, and it can be in
it
the form
felt
of a
painful at the time, but
exactly.
it definitely was something that really changed my life dramatically.
Yeah. So had you had an interest in shamanism before that? Do you have an American Indian background or heritage?
On my dad's side of the family, and the challenging part is that when I was very young, like 2 years old, my mom and my dad split up, and so I never got a chance to really find out first person
Right.
about that connection, other than through some of the knowledge that my mom had, which was fairly limited.
Yeah.
Um, And it was something that stayed in the background for me, like deeply below the surface until I got into my mid 30s.
Right.
And there was just something that kind of felt compelling to me that I needed to really look at that and see what it meant. Because I've always felt like there was a really deep spiritual side to my being,
Right.
even when I was a child. And it didn't come from religion. It was
Yeah.
something else. And
Yeah.
that's really where that kind of started for me.
Yeah. I get that. It's I think those things, especially when you have an experience like that when you're very young, I think on that subconscious level, it often takes quite a while for that to manifest itself later in our lives. And in your case, having a change of tutors, like people that you're working with,
Yeah.
probably spark that at some level. So, who or what would you say has been a major influence on your creative path? Apart from what we just discussed, is there a person who influences your work today in some way?
Oh, on on a purely personal level, I would say that my grandmother was a really big influence on me. Um, she took care of my younger brother and I
Right,
after my parents split, and she loved nature. She, in her own right, she was very creative, and I would say that she profoundly supported both my brother and I.
right,
But from an artistic standpoint, I would say that Salvador Dali uh, and beyond Dali, and the reason for me, Dali, not only because of his surrealist work, but because he was really, really influenced and he felt a really strong connection to physics. And so for me,
right.
that I feel sort of a kinship
Yeah,
in that regards. And then the other one is Pablo Picasso, primarily because he was such an innovator. And
mm,
I look up to that as a source of inspiration for me. Now, I don't necessarily artistically express what I do in the same way that they did.
yeah.
But as terms of inspirations, I would definitely point to them.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised that Dali is one of your influences. I recognise that. In fact, the second painting we'll talk about, I think I see a strong Dali influence
Okay.
in that. So, and interestingly, Dali was quite a big influence in my work early on. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love Dali, and I even did a couple of paintings that sort of, I suppose, mimicked his, if you like. Yeah. So, well, let's have a quick look at a couple of your paintings. I'll just share the screen, and you can tell us a little bit about them. So we'll start with this one here, if you'd like to.
Sure. Um, this is titled Orbital Trajectories in Dreamtime.
Yeah,
And this was one of 13 pieces that was in my last solo exhibition in 2021 that was titled Call Me Ishmael.
yeah,
And this is a piece that expressed the connection to dreams and physics and the evolving of the universe, which sounds like, how are those connected? But if I took inspiration, and I'm sure, Kadira, this is something that having been, in Australia and New Zealand, for me, the Aboriginal peoples talk about the dream time, and
yeah,
I'm not necessarily equating this to their, to their understandings, but for me, it was a source of inspiration that deep within us there are connections to the universe around us,
mm,
not only not only psychologically or spiritually, but also I think from a very quantum level, and also from an evolutionary standpoint, that we are the offspring, many thousands or probably millions of generations from the earliest life forms that started here on the earth.
yeah. I find this a fascinating painting, and I was saying to you earlier, well, about the connection that I made between this painting and my work with the painting in the background behind me.
Oh, neat.
And I'm beginning to put line work in my work to convey that sense, which I think you've captured in this painting. Of it's this, there's a space between between the lines, if you like. It's that it's almost like in your painting, you can almost hear like the wind of the universe.
Oh,
That's how I sort of experience your work.
oh, that's very. I love that analogy. That's way cool.
I mean, I really understand what you're saying about, at the quantum level, because I understand how everything's connected, and I think that this particular painting actually gives a really good, what would you say, just visual representation of that, because in a way you're trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do, which is make visual something that's unseen. Right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Is that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it's, that I think that's a challenge, and I love that challenge. Some people get it, some people don't.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's always a source for challenge and inspiration to look at some of these cutting edge ideas and then challenge myself with, how can I visually maybe represent this in some way that might be meaningful to somebody, that'll spark or be a springboard to maybe looking at some of the ideas that I'm trying to convey.
Yeah, yeah. And you can definitely see in this, I mean, you made a reference to fractals. I can see, because I understand fractals, I can see that influence here. And I love
yes.
I love the scientific writing in the background.
Yeah, there are
really
there are
cool.
A number of different mathematical equations there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, fantastic. I have no head for maths whatsoever. Totally, I can hardly add two numbers, but I admire people who can. So let's have a look at the next work. So as I was saying before, I really see Dali's influence in this work. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, it's very much a fair comment. That which lies beyond the horizon of knowing. For me, this is a very recent piece. I mean, I did this like within the last month.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things for me that's been really interesting, Kadira, in taking a look at our humanity and us trying to understand this universe that we're a part of.
Yeah.
I thought back to those who painted on the cave walls in Lascaux and other places around the world that left markings, and the artists who've been inspired throughout the centuries, throughout the ages, to make some sense of this. And I look at our evolution as an increasing understanding of our universe, whether it was originally trying to understand the physical signs that were around us, looking at leaves turning up that let us know that rain was approaching, creating gods to try to explain the machinations of the world around us, because a lot of times things felt very chaotic. And so how do you explain that? How do you explain how we're around? And then, throughout the ages, science came along. And so we started to expand our knowledge, and that horizon of knowing has grown larger and larger over time to where we are today. There's still many things that we don't know. And the challenge for us has always been, when somebody tries to expand that horizon of knowing, there's always pushback. There's always people that are saying, no way, that can't, the sun can't be the center of our planetary system. The Earth, the Earth is stationary. Everything goes around the Earth. And so, you have people waging wars for things like that. And for me, this has been kind of a piece that deals with that. And the kind of stony face there that's holding the orb, I kind of was inspired by the Easter Island monolith.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that, even though I changed it a little bit, it was kind of inspiration, because people have always wondered, well, what were they about? What was all of that about? And I think of like the Egyptian sphinxes and the pyramids and other wonders around the world over the years has been oftentimes sources that inspired people, because they were wondering about the world around us.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your work here, I find it interesting that it's almost like the sky is cracked, or it's like the whole world, and there's no trees.
No,
no sign of natural life. Like, have we completely obliterated everything?
No, and I put the cracking in there is done on purpose, because again, it's easy for us living day to day and trying to get by and earning a living and all these things. We tend to cocoon ourselves within a comfort level that allows us to exist oftentimes. And so our world becomes self-circumscribed around us. And this sense of that horizon of knowing or not knowing, that's where that cracking is, because
Right.
I think deep down there's an inkling that we all kind of know that there's more to this existence than what we give credence to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay. Thank you for sharing
Oh, well,
insights
thanks.
with your work, Michael. It's really
Thanks.
great. Such works of, with such a deep level, a lot of symbolism, and yeah, many people would probably have quite a hard time unpacking a lot of that. Do you have like a longer artist statement when you show your works with each one, or do you just allow people to get what
Um,
they can out of it?
yeah, that's actually an excellent question. And what I've done, because at least my solo shows, and I've only had 3 solo shows,
Right.
but each one of them have been very conceptual, where each of the individual pieces are really part of a greater narrative.
Yeah.
And so what I have done, either in the artist statement or explanations with the pieces, I've included things in the past like QR codes that if somebody was
Okay. Yeah.
interested to learn more, would take them to my website for that
Okay.
particular piece and explain things. I've
Great.
used augmented reality
Okay.
with some of my work to add further explanations or further animations that go along with it explaining. So it is a challenge. So yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. What you just said brings to mind your background in game design. Like you're really, it's all coming together in your artwork,
Yes.
isn't it? It's quite
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the interactivity. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody's different in terms of how much they want to engage with you as an artist, with your
Yeah.
work. And I figure if you at least provide enough, they can go to whatever level of interactivity suits
Yeah.
them. And then if they want to talk to me directly, I always love engaging with visitors to a gallery and talk one on
Yeah.
one. That to me is really special.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So let's have a look. Oh yeah, a question I wanted to ask you was like, you use the digital and photographic media. Are the photos you use taken by yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything else, any other kind of media that you work within, or just strictly in the digital world, really?
Well, within the digital world, there are several different types of tools that I use. Again, depending on
Right.
the effects, fractals. I have a couple different
Yeah.
fractal programs that I work
Okay.
with.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I'll use that as a starting point for some works,
Mm.
like the trajectories and
Yeah.
orbital trajectories. And Dreamtime was one that
Yeah.
I started with a fractal and expanded from there. And then more recently, over the last several years, I've also been employing some AI as elements to the complete protocols that I'll employ. But the tools that I use are really in service of ideas that I have.
Right.
And the more challenging ones for me are the surrealistic pieces, because I usually have more planning out that I do early on, where the abstract or
Right.
the algorithmic pieces, they're more exploratory. I'll play with
Okay.
ideas, and then those ideas will start to kind of come to fruition.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I'll be more determinative in terms of how I want to take it to the end.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What's one professional experience that really stands out for you?
Oh, that's a really awesome question, actually. And I'd have to say that it was getting my first solo exhibit. That was just really something very special for me. I had created a piece, a surrealist piece that got into a show in Flagstaff here in Arizona, north of Phoenix, and that was for a show that was based on astronomy. And it was something that I wasn't sure whether it would get accepted, and it did.
Yeah.
And they liked the work enough. They said, we're going to have some openings for solo shows. If you're
Wow.
interested, give
That's
us a
exciting.
proposal. And I did, and I got in. And
Yeah.
that was just something really, really very satisfying for me. So I
Yeah.
have to say that was probably one of the more cool experiences for me.
Yeah. I think, for most artists, that's probably one of the highlights of their career is their first solo show. I know it was for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, it's always so exciting to know that someone's accepted your work so much that they actually, it sort of gives you that first boost of confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, I must be really an artist because this great gallery's accepted me.
That's exactly right. I agree.
So What do you think is the best part about being an artist?
That's probably the easier question to answer. And for me, it's being able to exercise my creativity.
Yeah,
I think art is an expression of that, where game design was as well, where my
yeah,
scientific background was an expression of my creativity as well. And that's been with me my whole life. And I knew very early on that whatever I did in life, my creativity was really important,
right.
that was being used.
Oh, that's great. And
Yeah.
what would you say is the worst aspect about being an artist, if there is one? Or maybe there's not.
Ah, you know, I don't know that there's really a worst. I'd say the challenge is oftentimes just feeling like you're this little minuscule being in a great ocean of life, and you're just saying, "Hey, I'm here," something, and
Yeah.
that's why I think the little successes are helpful. But
Mm,
I think as artists, we all feel like, well, we have something important that we want to share,
yeah.
and in that sharing, we want to be able to reach as many people as we can, and that's oftentimes easier said than done. And I think for me, that's probably the most challenging part of being an artist is just getting noticed enough. At
Yeah.
least for me.
Yeah. I think we're lucky now though as artists because we have the internet, and that's made a huge difference.
Yes,
It's made this interview today possible, like
precisely.
50 years ago it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been happening. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we do have that advantage which other artists in the past didn't have.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice to a young person just beginning an artistic career?
Yeah, actually, don't no, I don't want to say don't give up because that doesn't sound good enough to me. At least here in the US, I
Yeah.
can't speak for what it's like in Australia, but there's this sense that there's something wrong if you fail. And I hate using the word
Yeah.
fail,
Yeah.
but I'm a believer in experimentation and exploration.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you don't know what the end result is going to be. And
Exactly.
with that, you may get results that you think stink or that are failures or lack in some way. The problem is when we label things failure, we're setting ourselves up as judge and jury,
Mm,
and we oftentimes don't have the perspective. I think you need to give yourself the leeway to fail over and over and over again, as long as you see those challenges as learning experiences, because
yeah.
that's how you learn. You learn from
Yeah.
successes that you feel like, oh, I did this really well, but you also learn from the times where you fall flat or where you
Mm,
don't like the results. And you have to look at it and analyze it. And I think for younger artists, don't be afraid. Just do it. And if you hold back, you're not giving yourself enough to be able to learn from that. If you play it safe, you're never going to grow to the degree that you really can.
mm.
And I think it's where you really challenge yourself and you kind of do the high wire act with, you're not sure if you're going to fall to the ground or get to the other side. You have to
Yeah.
allow yourself to have those shortcomings because you will learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I always tell my students that, there is no such thing actually as a mistake. It is all a learning experience. And I call
Yeah.
it failing forward rather than,
Yes. It's
failing backwards, which is what,
language can be really tricky because
yeah.
we in the US we definitely focus on failure and you
Well,
don't ever want to
yeah.
fail.
It's the
And
same here.
that's destructive.
Yeah, it is. In Australia, we have this thing they call the tall poppy syndrome. And as soon as you start actually not failing and succeeding, they want to cut your head off. Like if you pop up above the crowd, everyone's there ready to criticize you. It's a terrible thing.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you there. I think that that's just such a powerful thing. And yeah, you've got to, you know what, there's no success without failure. And I
Right.
think that is the thing.
Yep.
Great thing. Great advice. Thanks, Michael. Um, so I understand that you've been on a vision quest recently. This would seem to dovetail nicely with your shamanic background. Can you please tell us more about this quest? What
So
moved you to
yeah,
undertake it?
yeah. So you and I and four other artists have been working with Krista Cloutier
Yeah,
from the Working Artist, and um, it was something that Krista floated as an idea that she was wanting to do this artist intensive, workshop kind of thing over the last several months. And I was very intrigued by it because I had personally gone on a vision quest several decades ago. And so that idea and understanding it, I was very intrigued. And with what was going on with me personally, it felt like a perfect opportunity. So I told her that I was interested, and she managed to pull it all together. I know there was some tricky scheduling that happened, with you being in the future and me with this is Tuesday for you and it's still
That's
only
right.
Monday for me. So obviously wrangling all of us across a globe where we're in very, very disparate time zones could be rather challenging, but it's been really interesting.
Interesting that you talk about challenging time zones. Personally, I have a terrible time. I'm amazed I turned up on time today because time zones just, I always seem to get it wrong. I don't know why. I said to her, I have a dyslexia in time zone management. Okay, so how's the experience been for you?
It's been really wonderful, and it's been for me very clarifying to my thought of this book that I want to get written and published. And so my main focus during this last several months on the artist vision quest has been focusing on that, getting feedback from you and the other artists, and sharing with the group kind of where I'm at and where I'm taking things. And so it's been, what I like about it is that even though it's a personal quest, the fact that I'm doing it in conjunction with others and being able to give my feedback to you and to the other artists and to receive that has really multiplied my time in focusing on myself. And I found that very magical.
That's a great word to use. I think that, it has been that as an experience. Do you think that you are changing as an artist as a result of undertaking this vision quest? Has it?
I don't know that I would say that I'm changing it as an artist. I would say that it's been really, it's given myself the time to focus on this, where previous I've been, for the last year and a half, I've been mulling the idea of my book idea since the end of the solo show that I had in 2021. And this several months has given me a focusing of my energy on there. And then the other thing for me, since I tend to be an introvert, having a small group to challenge ourselves, to give each other feedback, to support one another, that's been really beneficial for me personally. I like doing that, and the fact that our group has been small has really allowed me to be more open and not to kind of hold back. And so for me, that's been good.
Yeah, I think it's been it's an intimate forum, and I think probably all of us have experienced that that synergy in the group, and the sharing is of great value because we're working with like-minded people, and you can discuss things that people who aren't artists, like friends and family or whoever, don't understand what we're really talking about.
Yes,
and it's that, I think it's that connection, isn't it, between us that is so valuable.
Yes, because we can say things without having to explain it to the nth degree that others will get it. And we each have our own perspectives. I get that. But there's there's a base commonality that we have as creative individuals, as artists, that we speak a language, and we understand the frustrations or the challenges that each one of us has, unique as they are to each one of us.
That's right. And that support, I think, is particularly valuable because normally we operate in a very individual way. We're alone as we work. So it's great to have that connection. So I'd like to just ask you a little bit about your book that you've mentioned a couple of times.
Sure.
And I understand it has the same title as your last exhibition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So is the book about the exhibition, or what's the book about?
Okay, so the book title is Call Me Ishmael, and for anybody who's read Moby Dick, you probably realize that it's the first line from Moby Dick. It really, I was going to do sort of a short catalog of the exhibit afterward, and then I realized when I started just putting together my thoughts on that, that I had a lot more to say than what would be kind of a traditional exhibition catalog of just showing
Okay.
images and just giving some brief explanations of them. And that show, the Call Me Ishmael show, was really kind of a step from the previous show that I had done in 2020. And so what I'm really looking to do is to weave together a narrative that I've created that covers the beginnings and the evolution of the universe with spirituality, with neuroscience, with using my art as kind of the glue that holds it all together.
Okay.
That's kind of a stepping stone to the writing that's going to go with it. But it's relying on really cutting edge research that's happening in the areas of physics,
Yeah.
in neuroscience, in spirituality as well, and so it's an exploration of the universe is really much more interesting than we give credence to if
Yeah.
we just think again of life here on Earth. And
Mm.
why to me this is important is because if we're so parochial in thinking that this is everything, then our political differences, our religious differences, and our boundaries cause so much strife. If
Mm.
we can realize, this is my goal, if we can realize that we are so small
Yeah.
in regards to this big, beautiful universe, that maybe we can have more of a humbled nature about us and this world that we're very fortunate to be upon, that maybe we don't need to completely annihilate each other. We don't need
Yeah.
to use all of our resources and leave nothing behind, that maybe there's some hope for us yet. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. It's challenging because some of the ideas are really out there, but they're not out there from a complete fantasy. They're
Yeah.
out there because the world is so much more complex and simple at the same time. But
Yeah.
you need to uncover a lot of layers to kind of see where the premise is for some of these things to follow from there.
Right.
And it's something that I've thought about for a very long time. And I feel like I'm at a point now where I need to do this. And that's where my vision, that
Okay.
the Vision Quest, kind of dovetailed for me. And I've been really happy with having this time.
Oh, that's amazing. I think you're just so at the cutting edge. You're. I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, but she talks about being on the leading edge,
Uh-huh.
and that's where artists generally are. And some of them are more
Yes.
on the leading edge than others. And I think you're right on the very edge. I mean, your explorations, because you have the scientific background, and you have such a unique skill set and abilities that it's fascinating. I can't wait to read your book.
Thanks, Kendra. Thank you.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
very interested.
Thanks.
Yeah. So just one last question. What advice would you give a fellow artist who might want to join the Krista's Vision Quest?
Um, I think Krista has a really solid concept here to work with. She is also very qualified to guide people, artists looking to explore who they are, what their art might be, and especially if they're looking to move forward in some way that might be challenging, or that they might have some trepidation moving forward through, or just feel like things feel very cloudy and they're looking for clarity. I think
Right.
this is a program that uh, allows for exploration. Uh, it's challenging, it's affirming. With a small group, it's curated from
Mm.
Krista's viewpoint, and I give her a lot of credit for that. Is that she looks to see who might work well together.
Yeah.
there's no guarantees. Obviously, you
No.
do your best, and I think she's very qualified to do that. But I have to say that under Krista's guidance, she has provided each of us individually and collectively ways to explore and share and grow that we couldn't have done on our own.
Absolutely.
And that's been very meaningful.
Mm.
So my advice would be, what I like Krista set up an initial interview. It's a good way to kind of judge and see, feel out, do you feel like some kind of connection there? Do you feel comfortable with Krista and what she's saying? And I think she made it easy to give either a definitive yes or no. I want to explore this idea of going on this vision quest.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Michael. I think that gives people an idea of what to maybe expect, or how to approach it. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights with us today. It's been a pleasure to delve into your thoughts and unpack the way you work at a deeper level. So where can people look at your work, and how can they contact you if they might like to acquire one of your pieces?
Sure. My website is michaelpierreprice.com, all one long word. And they can also see my work on Instagram at MPP_digital_art. And you can always email me at michael@michaelpierreprice.com. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So it's been great talking to you today. Thanks, Michael. And I wish you every success with your book.
Oh, thanks, Kadira.
And your future journey as an artist.
Oh, thanks. Well, I've enjoyed our time together, and I know we'll have more time in the future. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that as well.
Okay. Thank you.